Our estranged son, who left us at 18 to reunite with his bio parents, cut all contact and ignored us for nearly a decade. Now he wants our money, but we refused, and he tried to shame us publicly, but it backfired. I'm a 57-year-old man. My wife, who's 54, and I always wanted children. When that didn't happen naturally, we tried everything until we welcomed our son into our lives through adoption. He was just a few months old at the time. We doted on him, his first steps, his first words, the excitement of school projects. For years, we were a tight-knit family, the kind you'd see at sporting events, cheering on the sidelines and snapping countless photos. Our son grew up right. He had a knack for tinkering with gadgets and always seemed to have a question about how things worked. He was our world, and I truly believed we shared a bond that could withstand anything. But when he turned 16 or so, he started expressing curiosity about his biological parents. We never hid anything from him. We told him the story of his adoption in an age-appropriate way, explained that he had bio parents out there, and that if he ever wanted to connect with them, we'd support him. At the time, I had no idea how complicated that would become. When he reached 18, everything changed. He located his bio parents through some mutual contacts. At first, my wife and I thought it was just a phase, meeting them, understanding more about his roots, maybe forming a relationship. However, within a few months, his attitude toward us chilled. He became distant, arguing that we'd lied to him all his life, as if we'd somehow hidden the truth of his heritage. It stung. We'd always been open, but he was convinced we'd robbed him of a chance to know his biological family from the start. I still remember the day he packed his belongings. He announced he was leaving to live with his bio parents, who, according to him, were more authentic and understood him better. We pleaded with him to stay in touch, to at least talk things through, but he slammed the door on his way out, ignoring our tears. We tried calling, texting, emailing. No response. Months slipped into years. Occasionally, we'd hear snippets through distant acquaintances that he'd moved out of state with his bio family. We worried ourselves sick, wondering if he was okay, or if he needed help. But our efforts to reach him were met with silence. It was like we didn't exist. That silence lasted for nearly a decade. My wife grieved. She blamed herself sometimes, thinking maybe she'd done something wrong. We'd see old photos of him at birthday parties, vacations, and our hearts would ache. It was a loss unlike any I've experienced. Some friends tried to console us, saying perhaps he needed time to figure out who he was. Others were more blunt, suggesting he'd been swayed by promises or romanticized ideas from his bio parents. We didn't know what to believe, so we went on with our lives, always leaving that proverbial door open if he ever decided to return. Then, out of nowhere, sometime earlier this year, my wife and I got a phone call. The voice on the other end was our son's. He acted casual, as if no time had passed. He asked how we'd been, said he missed us, and wanted to arrange a visit. I was stunned, yet a spark of hope ignited in my chest. Maybe he'd matured. Maybe he wanted a genuine reconciliation. We set a date for him to come over on a weekend afternoon. The day he arrived, it felt surreal. We opened the front door to see him taller, older, but still the boy we'd raised. He walked in like he owned the place, barely glancing around. I offered coffee. My wife asked about his life. He gave clipped answers, then got straight to the point. He was in a tight spot financially and needed our help. His eyes flickered to old family photos on the mantel, as if recalling a time we'd always provided for him, through school, camps, and everything else. Now he expected the same, no questions asked. For a moment, I was torn. Part of me wanted to help, but I also felt a painful knot in my stomach. He hadn't spoken to us for almost 10 years. He left us broken-hearted, chasing some dream of a perfect bio family. Now he'd emerged with a smile and an outstretched hand, expecting us to solve his problems. My wife and I exchanged a look. We both sensed something wasn't right. Sitting in the living room, our son explained that he was facing debts, job issues, and a long list of other woes. He offered few specifics, just broad statements like, "I've had a rough time," or "My bio parents aren't in a position to help." He hinted that we owed him some sort of safety net because we raised him. The entitlement in his tone was jarring. I asked carefully, "Where have you been these last few years?" "We tried to reach you." He shrugged. "I needed space," he said, "to figure things out with my bio parents." My wife, voice trembling, asked if they were still in his life. He waved dismissively. We're not close anymore. It just didn't work out. That confirmed our suspicions. Maybe the reunion with his bio parents didn't fulfill the fantasy he had. Now, with nowhere else to turn, he was back to see if we'd bail him out. He didn't mention any apology for cutting us off, any regrets, or even an explanation beyond the shallow needed space. It felt as if he was reciting a script. He then came right out with, I could use a good chunk of money, and maybe a place to crash for a while. My wife's hands tightened around her coffee cup. I could see the heartbreak in her eyes. This wasn't the heartfelt reunion we'd hoped for. It was a transaction. In the past, we might have caved, but a decade of silence changes a person. I told him, as gently as I could, that we weren't comfortable just handing over large sums. He looked offended. You raised me, he argued, so don't act like I'm some stranger. The irony of that statement twisted my stomach. He treated us like strangers for nearly 10 years. When I firmly said we needed time to think, he huffed and said he couldn't wait. That his situation was urgent, that we had no idea how bad things were for him. My wife tried to coax more details out. He gave vague answers, changed the subject, then repeated that he needed cash ASAP. My heart sank. It was clear he was only here for money. After an awkward pause, my wife mustered the courage to say, we love you, but we can't just fix everything with a check. A flash of anger crossed his face. What's the point of having parents if they won't help you? He spat. Then he stormed out, slamming our front door like he'd done years ago. We were left in stunned silence. My wife wept quietly. I felt exhausted and conflicted, half tempted to chase after him, but also painfully aware he was taking advantage. Over the next few days, we tried calling him, hoping to talk calmly. He ignored us. Then, out of nowhere, he blasted us on social media, accusing us of turning our backs on him, claiming we never truly loved him, and implying we were wealthy misers who refused to help our own child. He tagged distant relatives, old family friends, and even wrote that we'd abandon him. The narrative was twisted and hurtful. Suddenly, we found ourselves in the middle of an online storm. A few naive acquaintances reached out, scolding us for letting our son suffer. Others asked if what he wrote was true. We tried to keep our composure, responding politely that the situation was more complex than his rant suggested. But it stung. My wife lost sleep, worried people would believe his version. I felt a growing anger at his betrayal. He not only wanted money, he wanted to publicly shame us into giving it. I decided to confront him directly. I sent him a message. We need to talk in person. This smear campaign isn't fair to anyone. He replied with a sneering text, keep your money. I'll let the world know how you treat family. That line confirmed everything. He was using guilt as leverage. He thought we'd cave under public pressure. Over the next week, the social media fallout escalated. Our extended family was dragged into the drama. Some believed him, at least initially. My wife discovered that certain mutual friends had started gossiping behind our backs. The negativity brought us back to those heartbreaking days when he first left. We felt helpless again. But this time, we weren't about to surrender or buy his favor. My wife and I decided enough was enough. We gathered all the messages and screenshots, our attempts to contact him over the years, the text he sent that day demanding money, the hateful posts he'd plastered online. We weren't doing this to wage war, but we wanted to protect ourselves. If he tried to escalate things legally or continue slandering us publicly, we'd be prepared with the facts. I reached out to a local attorney, explaining the situation. The attorney listened carefully, confirming that while defamation cases can be tricky, documenting everything was a wise move. The attorney also suggested we issue a polite, factual statement if needed, clarifying the real story. My wife was hesitant. She didn't want to drag our family feud into the public eye. But I sensed that if our son kept attacking us, we might have to respond, not with insults, but with the truth. Meanwhile, my phone buzzed daily with messages from distant relatives, some of them furious on our behalf, others uncertain. My mother, who was quite elderly, called in tears, confused about the accusations our son was making online. It broke my heart that she was dragged into this. I reassured her quietly. We did everything we could for him. He's twisting the story. A few evenings later, we got an unexpected phone call from a close family friend who was well aware of the adoption. He'd known our son since childhood. He told us he'd confronted our son on social media, pointing out that our son had vanished for a decade and only returned when he wanted money. Our son apparently lashed out at him, calling him brainwashed. That was the final straw for many folks who'd initially sympathized. Slowly, the tide began to turn as people realized how contradictory his claims were. Still, he didn't back down. He posted more rants. My adoptive parents never gave me the support I needed. They only pretended to love me, and so forth. Some comments from strangers or acquaintances were downright nasty toward us. But others started challenging him. If they were so awful, why are you asking them for help now? Or you cut them off for 10 years, why blame them suddenly? It was painful to read, but also gratifying to see a few folks see through his act. Eventually, my wife and I decided to put out a brief statement on our own social media pages. We wrote something like, "We love our son and have tried contacting him many times over the past decade. He chose to cut ties and only reached out now seeking financial help without any discussion or reconciliation. We have always been open to a real relationship, but we cannot be manipulated or shamed into giving money under these circumstances." We ended it kindly, hoping not to pour more fuel on the fire. That post got more traction than we expected. People began to piece the puzzle together. Our genuine attempts to reconnect, his abrupt demands, his hateful online campaign. The backlash turned on him, with folks calling him out for trying to publicly coerce his adoptive parents. We saw comments like, "Dude, you ghosted them for a decade, and this is on you, not them." Then the phone rang. It was our son, sounding furious. "How dare you post about me online?" he snapped. I calmly told him we were defending ourselves against his accusations. He shot back with a volley of insults, then threatened to reveal private family secrets if we didn't pay up. My hands were shaking with frustration. "We have no secrets to hide," I replied evenly. "But if you keep threatening us, we'll protect ourselves however we must." That conversation ended with him yelling something incoherent and hanging up. My wife sank into the couch, her eyes rimmed with tears. I embraced her, whispering that we'd stand together, no matter what. A part of me still grieved, remembering the little boy we once rocked to sleep. Yet here we were, preparing for another emotional showdown. A few days passed. The public storm started fading as people moved on to other gossip. But privately, we braced for whatever our son might try next. One afternoon, my wife got a message from a cousin who said, "Your son's still ranting to anyone who'll listen, claiming he's going to expose you in some big way." We didn't know what that meant. Maybe he'd made up stories. Maybe he intended to spin his adoption as something cruel. Regardless, we were done cowering. Then, in a sudden twist, his bio parents reached out. Their message was surprisingly civil, acknowledging that things hadn't gone smoothly when our son moved in with them. They hinted that he'd become angry over the years, especially when they couldn't provide the life he expected. They apologized for their part in encouraging him to leave us so abruptly, admitting they thought it best at the time but now realized it caused more damage. We appreciated their candor, though it couldn't undo the turmoil. They didn't offer any solution, just a note of regret. It was some small comfort to know they saw the situation for what it was. Finally, the showdown arrived. Our son posted a long rant on social media, filled with half-truths and outright fabrications, claiming we'd abused him psychologically, withheld money he was owed, and never supported him emotionally. He threatened to go to the media if we didn't wire him a large sum. My wife trembled with rage. I felt a calm fury settle over me. That was it. He was publicly blackmailing us now. We had our attorney send a cease and desist letter regarding defamation, laying out the evidence we'd compiled, timestamps of our attempts to contact him, messages from him demanding money, and his repeated refusal to engage in real dialogue. We didn't file a lawsuit, only warned that if he continued spreading harmful lies or attempted extortion, we'd pursue legal action. By that point, many of his online friends turned skeptical. People questioned why he wouldn't show any proof of his claims. Some demanded receipts for his allegations, which he didn't have. Others recalled how he bragged about leaving us for his bio parents years ago, calling us controlling. Contradictions piled up, and his credibility crumbled. The backlash was swift. Instead of garnering sympathy or money, he was called out for his manipulative tactics. When he tried to shame us publicly, it backfired. The more he raged, the more people saw the inconsistencies. He ended up deleting several posts. We heard from a friend of a friend that he was furious we got away with not giving him cash. That phrase, "got away with solidified how entitled he felt. In the end, we never had to cough up a dime. The scandal he tried to stir fizzled out. Our statement of facts, the attorney's letter, and the contradictory stories he told were enough to dismantle his smear campaign. My wife and I kept our heads high, refusing to stoop to further online battles. We realized that, painfully, we'd lost the son we once knew. If he ever truly wanted to reconcile and apologize, we'd listen, but we wouldn't be manipulated again.